My name is Gleanne, and I guess we can get started.
Leanne.
Gleanne, yeah. So feel free to, drop your name and what institution you're at in the chat box. Bear with us, as we're 269 days into this working from home situation, and I'm still learning new things about Zoom every day. A lot has happened this year, so we're going to talk about it. Let's see. So, oh, my name is Gleanne. Oh, hello. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. My name is Gleanne Kinsler. I am the coordinator of student organizations at Cal State Fullerton. I am also in the doctoral program. I'm interested in researching civic engagement, and so we're here to talk a little bit more about civic engagement and what that means. Like many other people, I've been interested in this topic because this year has been really trying, and I've been doing a lot of reflection on, what is my role, what is the power I have, and how do I make a difference. And so I've figured out that, the little power I do have in this world is helping our students lead their student organizations at our campus. So I'm going to leave it to Allie to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Allie Ullman. I serve currently with Gleanne as a graduate intern for student organizations at Cal State Fullerton. I myself recently graduated from my master's in higher education program in the spring. And with regards to the civic engagement topic, this is also a topic that I'm interested in with Gleanne, and it's also a little bit informed by some of my past experiences. I had a past experience serving a term with AmeriCorps, which is very community and civic engagement oriented work. So we're just really excited to kind of dive into civic engagement as it pertains to college students on our campus.
And a little bit more about our campus, because that's kind of like the third character in this conversation, is we are at Cal State Fullerton, which is one of the largest Cal States in our system. In the CSU system, there's about 23 other sister campuses. We have about 40,000 students, and we have a large HSI, or Hispanic, we're a Hispanic serving institution, and a large first generation population. On any given year prior to this pandemic, we usually hover around 350 student organizations. This year we have about 300. And although we have about 7 full-time staff members, we have two full-time staff members overseeing our fraternity and sorority life staff, or fraternity and sorority life chapters. We have 1 staff member for our 16-ish sports clubs, and then the rest is left to me. And then I have a handful of grad students that work with me to support all of our student organizations. So that's a little bit about our office. So going into the next slide, we have a poll for you all. So we would like to know, what kind of institution are you at? All right, can you all see the results? Maybe, yes. No, you can't see the results. If I end it, what happens? Looks like, how do I do this? Sorry, y'all, bear with us. You can't see the poll. What happens when I do that? Oh, here we go. Show results. There we go. Now you can see the results. So a large portion of our pupils here are also large. Oh, we have a lot of public state institutions, and then a handful of private schools, and then a sprinkle of community college folks. Awesome. This is just helpful to know. We have another poll for you all. All right, looks like most people have voted. This gives us a picture of who's in the room. So also helps you all understand where you all are at. Cool. Well, thank you for, we have a few other polls later in this presentation. So today we're going to talk about civic engagement, what it looks like on our campuses. Hopefully you'll be able to walk away with some ideas of how to promote civic engagement on your campus. Obviously, 2020 has been very trying and very triggering. There's been a lot of programming around voting and leading up to the elections, but we want to make sure that we keep up the momentum. So we'll talk about civic education and our student organizations. Then Allie will cover the things that we've been doing on our campus. And we'll talk about some things that we can all do moving forward. So 2020, it's been a long year, right? Our campus went remote on March 17th. And it's funny because I started journaling around that time because I wanted to know what I was going to do with my time. And at the beginning of the pandemic, my journal was really full of optimism. I learned how to play the ukulele via YouTube. I was doing a lot of online workouts, baking cookies, and doing all the things. And then over the summer, things got really dark, and it's hard to believe like all these things happened this year. It's been a lot, and I feel like our COVID situation is worse than when we left campus back in March. So another poll for you all. Let me see. Oops. What issues are your students most concerned about? So this is a select all that apply. And for those of you who joined in late, feel free to ask questions and put your comments and thoughts in the chat box. Allie and I will do our best to monitor it. All right, I'm going to share all of this with you all. So not surprising, I think this pandemic is probably very top of mind for a lot of students, along with racial injustice, basic needs. So there's a lot out there. I'm sure there are other things that they are also very concerned about, but we figured it'd be helpful to share these results with you all, just to see what the landscape is like among all of our campuses. So prior to the 2020 election, there was a 2016 Pew Research report that ranked the US 28th out of 35 Western democracies in terms of voter turnout, which is really interesting because American higher education has really become like the gold standard of higher education, and our colleges and universities have been struggling to find a way to connect the ideas from the classroom to the communities our students live in and the global context. So it's really interesting that the most diverse demographic of students with the highest number of degrees from a highly regarded education system aren't carrying out their responsibility to vote. This has obviously changed a little with the 2020 election, but we also talk about voting as like the easiest way to measure civic engagement, but it really is a lot more than that. I was talking to a friend who teaches a political science course, and he was telling me about a story that he was telling me about a conversation he had with his students when they were talking about the census. They all knew the census was important, but when he asked his students why they completed the census, their results really varied. So one student admitted that he completed the census because he was just tired of getting phone calls and having people knock on his door, and that it was a way for him just to get people off his back. So he was very honest. But another student said that she had 3 kids and that she wanted to make sure that her children's schools had appropriate funding and resources for all 3 of them, which is super interesting, given they were all in this political science course together, and higher education would be like the natural place for students to connect those ideas from the classroom to their communities, but not all those students in that class seem to understand the impact of their civic duties. They all knew the census was important, but they couldn't say why. So my question to you all was like, why do you carry out your civic duties? And so oftentimes when people think about civic engagement, they automatically think of things like completing the census. They think about, you know, jury duty. They think about all of these like formal processes, but it's really more than that. It's the things that are also outside those political processes. So I like this definition from Ehrlich and Hollander, which sums it up pretty well. Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivations to make a difference. It means promoting the quality of life in a community, both through the political and non-political processes. So it's showing that you care, demonstrating that you care through both those political and non-political processes. And I think a lot about like how civic engagement has always been a fundamental part of higher education's mission and the history of like how colleges and universities were founded, but we haven't been able to explicitly identify civic engagement as part of student success as this in the same ways that we talk about graduation, retention, transfer rates, right? So now that we all have an idea of what civic engagement means, we wanted to know a little bit more about what that looks like on your campus. So I have another poll for you all. So this is another select all that applies.
And I'm noticing that there's several of you that are indicating other as one of your choices. So if you want, feel free to share what that other thing is in the chat so that we can see what other things you all are doing that maybe aren't listed here.
Great idea, Allie. Thanks. Give everybody just a few more seconds. Melissa, that's awesome. What institution are you at? I'm sure a lot of us would love to learn more about that. Awesome. All right, I will share these results with you all. I think for a lot of campuses, it is a lot of those community service activities that are highly, encouraged among our students. A lot of election programming, obviously, partnerships with community organizations, local government, and then obviously the student organizations affiliated with political and social action organizations. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Thank you for participating in this poll. It's helpful. So we're talking now, what is our role as student affairs professionals, right? That's the $1,000,000 question. So before we get to that, we wanted to know who is, providing the, civic education on your campus. This is just select one. And then same thing if you have other, tell us who that other group is in the chat box. It's so interesting to see like who is providing civic education. And I'll share these results once a few more people vote. Looks like almost everybody's voted. Civic clubs in the chat box. Student affairs does some, career services does more, leadership and community service office, public service center at UC Berkeley. Within student affairs at UNCP, we have specific department, community and civic engagement. All right, so it looks like for the most part, it's coming out of student life, student activities, offices. It sounds like a few other campuses have like maybe some civic engagement departments or offices, which is great. And I'm starting to feel like civic engagement, similar to like diversity, shouldn't live in one area, right? It shouldn't just be the diversity office doing the diversity work. It should be everybody's job. And so it's been really interesting because our students today are really not partisan. And I know a few of us talked about our political and social action groups doing a lot of that civic education, but that's not how most of our students align themselves. And so Campus Labs, which is now Anthology, released a white paper in 2018, I think after the 2016 election. And it really resonated with me because working with our student organizations for the past year, particularly around election cycles, I don't see many of our students being like ride or die for a political party. Yeah, there are a few, and those are probably the ones that are affiliated with the political or social action organizations. But by and large, most students aren't aligning their values with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party all the way down the ballot. They are very concerned about the issues. And so most of our student organizations aren't political, or at least like explicitly political, but how do we get them to act on the issues that they do care about? And so this is the question that many of us are asking. And so I think back to the Breonna Taylor case and think back to this past summer and how enraged our students were. Social media was on fire, but you think about what has happened or not happened since then. And, regardless of your political ideologies, like you can just see like the data of what was trending on Twitter, Instagram, social media back this summer, and where is it now when we look at just like the name Breonna Taylor, like where is that passion now? And I feel like anger only fuels us for so long. It's not sustainable. Anger is helpful, but you need to then transform that anger to action. But like we saw with this Breonna Taylor case, a lot of students were passionate, motivated, making phone calls, doing all the things, signing petitions over the summer, but it's kind of quiet down a little bit. And so my question is, what if every single student organization aligned their mission with a larger issue. Because at our campus, there are about 300 student organizations. And I often think back to like, if you can't have all 300 caring about all the things, but if every single student organization cared about one thing, so if the hiking club cared about the environment, and you had a gender-based organization caring about stopping sexual assault, sexual violence, you had cultural organizations caring about representation, then you'd have 300 issues for them to all move on. And there's so much intersectionality with just even one issue. The environment, for example, you can take so much, there's so much there with just the environment that that student organization could then make a difference in their communities, in their network on a grassroots level to then make its way to these larger scale policies. And so one thing I wanted to share was we've been able to embed this and start with our student organization registration and bylaws. We actually borrowed this idea from the strategic planning guide idea from our student organization summit colleagues last year. There were a number of other campuses that had started doing this through their registration process. And so we put our CSUF spin on it, our Titan spin on it. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Simon Sinek, but we were very inspired by his work and really aligning the purpose of our student leaders with the purpose of their organizations, the purpose of their organizations to the larger society, right? And so thinking about if I can lead with purpose, then I will then, be fueled and motivated to keep going, get things moving and make an impact. And so this is just a little snippet of our strategic planning guide. I will then carry it over to Allie to talk a little bit more about the other things that we've been doing on our campus.
Yes, thanks, Gleanne. So similar to what Gleanne mentioned a little earlier about how rather than seeing civic engagement or civic education being something that comes from a department that's intended to do that, we're trying to, beginning this semester, we decided to start kind of coming up with ideas and plans and some sort of intentional structure to integrate civic engagement and civic education into the stuff that we're already doing. And so the things that I'm going to be talking about are about how we've started doing that this semester. And so you'll see at the top right, we are utilizing a few things to address some of the issues that we were kind of looking out for and trying to promote with our students and our student organizations and those who participate in that involvement, right? And so some of the things that we've been utilizing and building this semester so far is something that we're referring to as our civic engagement calendar, which I'll go over in a little bit more detail soon. Titan Link, which is our campus labs platform, and social media, particularly Instagram at the moment so far. And we're using those things to address, of course, the semester voter education was a big one, as well as local community engagement, which looks like engaging in maybe like local government. So attending city council meetings, things like that, right? Being aware of who the public officials are in your city or the community that you belong to, right? Institutional engagement. And so what we mean by that is very low hanging fruit of like student government, right? On our campus, being engaged in that way, knowing who those individuals are, participating in the voting, which sometimes doesn't have the biggest turnout, even though it's very kind of easy to participate in. And also, at least for us, another example that I'll refer to later is we belong to a large system of Cal States of 23 other campuses. So there's also ways for students to be involved in the decisions happening at a more larger level outside of the institution as well. Student orgs and community organizations. So like Leanne mentioned, student organizations that are for a particular cause, like being involved with that cause and connecting with local community organizations that are also, fighting that same cause as well. Um, and and then the larger issues as well, like happening like in society, in the world, just kind of like also being engaged and informed about other things going on. So mostly we're trying to, like Gleanne mentioned before, like look at civic engagement further than jury duty and voting and things like that, because there's a lot of other ways to engage with our communities and be involved in these things outside of just like showing up to vote, and especially showing up to vote. A lot of times we think about just presidential elections, right? And so we want to kind of highlight for our students that there's a lot of other opportunities to be involved in this way. And so the first thing that I'll kind of go into more depth on is our civic engagement calendar that I mentioned. And so our purpose with the calendar was to essentially create a sustainable kind of guide for integrating civic engagement and civic education into the work that we do in our department, and to have it be something that is all academic year round through the summer, not just around election season, right? And so we wanted to create kind of a calendar where we can have, important dates of things that are going on in the world, going on campus, maybe holidays, and definitely still election dates. So that we can kind of build what we want to put out there, what we want to post, or what things we want to do based on that. And for that to be like a living document that gets carried on into the next year so that we can continue to build on it, and so that it doesn't just like fizzle out after particular like hype times like the election and things like that. We wanted to keep it going. And so if we can go to the next slide. This is what the calendar looks like right now. Like I said, this is something that we're starting to build this semester, so it's still, a work in progress, but you'll see that we have it divided by the month, and it has like the dates on the side, the topic of whatever that date or holiday or, topic is, with a description next to it. And then we also kind of came up with some learning outcomes or the purpose for why we want to, create content around that date or topic. And then our notes is basically just like, what kind of output are we trying to create? Is it an Instagram story? Is it an Instagram post? Is it a news article on Titan Link? Things like that. So just kind of what we kind of want to create. And then of course, like the last column is just links for where we can find that information that is helpful for creating that content. And again, this is meant so that all this stuff is here for whoever, for example, like, I was a grad student in this office, right? And so usually grads are gonna be coming through. So whoever comes back around to carry this work, whoever's kind of role it is, but also like for everyone to be able to, everyone in the office to also contribute to this and see it, and be able to pick it up and look and be like, oh, it's September, like we did these things around this time last year, but I also have these other ideas that we can do, right? So we want it to be a sustainable practice of integrating civic engagement and civic education into the content that we're putting out. And then the next slide. So the next thing is we utilize Titan Link, which is our campus labs platform where we have all our student organizations and kind of our place where students come to see what, student organizations we have, the events going on and such. And so we utilized this platform in a few different ways. So one of those is Titan Link news articles. We're able to produce, send out news articles that has like information, links, resources around a particular topic. We utilized event categories. So around the time of the election, we had a 2020 elections category so that if folks were putting on an event related to the election, they could use that event category. And if someone wanted to participate or look for, events that were specific to election stuff and they wanted to engage in that way, they could easily find that. We also utilized events as a way to just promote information. So it was kind of like it shows up as an event, but it just has information on it. And I'll go into a little more detail about that later. And then we utilize the alerts feature on Titan Link. And if we go to the next page, I have some examples of what those things kind of look like. So for the alerts, for example, on the top right, you see it says like new student org registration, Discoverfest, things like that. Right now, we don't have civic engagement things on there in this screenshot, but those are things that show up right at the top of this platform when students come to it. And so we utilize that as a way to, promote voter education information during that time. We had our civic engagement news article that has like the various ways that you can engage civically. And so we had that hyperlinked up there as well. So there's this is one way to be able to like one of many ways to just have the information be like everywhere and anywhere for students to encounter and engage with and be able to just take in that information. On the left, you'll see the categories for the events. We have advocacy and civic engagement in addition to the 2020 elections that I mentioned earlier. And then toward the bottom right is the various, some of the various like news articles that we've put out. Definitely a lot of them so far had been about voting and election related things, in addition to the general like civic engagement one that we have, but we have more that are coming out that are going to be, again, like we talked about, like, civic engagement beyond just engaging in the general presidential elections that come around. And so these are some of the things that we used Titan Link for. And then lastly is social media. So right now, this mostly pertains to Instagram, but of course that can grow to other things. In our office, we utilize TikToks for certain things as well, so that could be a thing in the future too. But again, utilizing Instagram specifically to promote civic education in a way that's engaging, and using a platform that has kind of like a far reach with our students, right? So things on social media are shareable. So our student organizations who are following us can share that content to their Instagram pages. And then that's seen by their membership, their past members, people like that. And we utilized various kind of like modes of sharing on Instagram. So story posts, and that includes like the various little features on the stories, right? You can ask questions, you can do polls and stuff like that. So we utilize those to try to engage our students with civic engagement content. Feed posts, so just regular posting to our feed. We utilized Linktree in our bio, which is a, if you're not familiar, it's a link that you can put anywhere really, but you can more helpfully put it in your Instagram bio. And it's one link that you can put that opens up to a place with several links for students to access. So if you refer to a link in your story or in your post, which isn't always hyperlinked, you can't really click from there. You can just direct them to your bio so that they can go there and all the links that they need are there. And then following local pages, which I mean when I say that is like following pages and Instagrams that are local to the community. So maybe, we're Cal State Fullerton, so following the city of Fullerton and other surrounding cities so that when they post information that is relevant to, again, like city council meetings or other things that are going on in the community, we can share that information with our students so that they are aware of that, and so that that is information that they're used to seeing, because it's unfortunately not as common for us to be super aware of what's going on in our local governments as opposed to at least on the state or federal level. And so we want to try to encourage that by just being aware of them, by having that following and sharing what they have to offer. And then the last thing that we utilize is this, we have a civic engagement collection. So on Instagram, if you can go to the next page, Gleanne, I'll kind of point to something in particular. So here is a bunch of screenshots of various things that we've done. But if you look at the kind of big square on the left, I can't point to it because I'm not like in charge of the screen, but where it says like stay informed, get social, like on most like Instagram posts, there's that little like bookmark indicator at the bottom. And usually when you click on that, you can save it, and it'll prompt you to save it to a collection, and you can create a collection specifically for maybe like civic engagement content that you want to put out there. So we've utilized that just to keep this kind of information and content in one particular place, so that again we can refer back to it in the future. Anyone who's trying to find more content can see the pages that we've referred to in the past. And then the first thing on the left is the link tree feature that I mentioned earlier, with all of the various links to civic engagement and voter education stuff that we've used recently. And then you have like our story engagement, different things that we've posted on our story. Learn more about issues impacting CSU students. So that's one post that was related to getting involved in the CSU system. And of course, we want to also encourage like getting involved at the, on our campus when it comes to student government as well. And then also the local, like you'll see like City of Buena Park and City of Santa Ana, the virtual meetings for city council meetings that happen. So sharing information about like the candidates that are running locally and things like that. And also for around the time of Thanksgiving this semester, we also were sharing content about Indigenous communities and how our students can learn about the Indigenous land that they live on, and the Indigenous communities that that land belongs to. So that was the other post there. If we go to the next slide. So that's some of the stuff that we have done so far. And our plans for the upcoming semester and the upcoming year is to continue to build on that. So continuing to build out from just voting in the 2020 elections, right? We want to try to carry that momentum of engagement that we had and try to keep that going with, getting involved with local communities, like we mentioned, which also includes supporting local small businesses. That's another way that we're looking at civic engagement and trying to promote that. Institutional participation, like I said, student government on our campus, as well as like if you belong to a larger system where decisions that are made there also impact our students, like they can get involved at that level as well. Encouraging our student organizations to connect with any local community organizations that are fighting for the cause that they're interested in their org. And also encouraging our students to form organizations about things that they're passionate about that maybe there isn't an organization for yet. Like just kind of encouraging that as an option. Like if there's something that they're really passionate about and that they feel strongly about, like making sure that our students know that they can create a student organization for that. If we can go to the next slide. And here we have a few kind of like questions to reflect on when thinking about implementing or integrating civic engagement into the work that you do. And just reflecting on some of these things. So how can we get students to be civically engaged, not just for this moment, but for life? So like sustaining that momentum and seeing past just like the occasional, opportunity to vote, or the occasional jury duty, or the occasional holiday volunteer opportunity. And then if students don't learn how to civically engage now, where will they learn how to do it? I know when me and Gleanne were talking about this topic a while back and kind of creating stuff, I talked about like, I know I did community service for a high school requirement, but it was very limited, and there could have been a much bigger opportunity to like learn and be more civically engaged and learn about my local community and what's going on, instead of just kind of simply checking a box, right? Like sometimes we think that we're going to learn it in certain areas or be engaged in a certain way, maybe in the classroom or in college, but we kind of just have to embed it in what we're doing, because we don't know where else they may be engaged in this way, or be learning how else they can be civically engaged in their communities. And then also, how are we role modeling the behavior that we want them to see. And a part of this is also thinking about, the conversations and dialogue that needs to happen in order for that learning and growth around civic education to happen, that it can't just be something that we just throw out there, but like being okay and comfortable with having conversations about the things that are going on. And also encouraging drawing that connection between the intentions, like Gleanne mentioned earlier, the intentions around the actions, right? Like with the census and things like that, right? And yeah, we could go on to the next slide. These are just a couple of the resources that we've utilized in some of our like Instagram promotions and things that we've posted, or the articles that we've shared, just some of the content that we've created for our students so far. These have been helpful resources that we have used that hopefully can be helpful to others. I know the National Voter Education Week was a big helpful one for voting, and there was a lot of content that they made available for us to utilize and share. And that was one of the story posts that I had a screenshot of earlier, where they had like an action for each day of the week for getting prepared to vote. And that was one of the things that I referred to earlier about the way that we used our events feature on Titan Link. We created an event for each of those days of the week with that action and had the resources and like the links and resources embedded into that online event. But yeah, these were just some of the helpful resources that we've used so far.
I think the challenge we have is, how do we get our students, they obviously care very deeply about the issues. And so it's getting them motivated to take action on the things that they care about. And oftentimes, like, it's more sustainable for them to care about maybe a single issue related to an interest, a hobby, a major. And so getting them to not just care, but then, figure out like how are they going to make an impact for other people and for future generations. So like, what is that intention behind all of that? And so those were some of the things that Allie's been working on this past semester, and hopefully we can continue doing it throughout the year, tying it into, observances and holidays and things that are happening around this time. Hopefully 2021 looks a little bit differently. And so I think we have a slide in case you want to connect with us. Here is our contact information. I know Allie and I will stay around after this, but now I think we just had a feedback question for you all. So let me launch this last poll, and you all can drop questions, comments in the chat. And so here is the last poll. I'll go back to our contact information in case you have questions. 2020 has been a lot, so we hope that you all take care of yourselves and stay healthy, because it is important, so that we can also, support our students and do all the things. It's a crazy time, but you all got this. Thank you for joining us today. But yeah, that was pretty much all we had. Allie, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope, that's about it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to, I think there's much fewer people in here now, so you can unmute yourself if you want to ask, or you can type in the chat. Or as Gleanne mentioned, we have our contact info there.